So the 12% electricity price hike by Eskom is set to kick in today. This comes after the power utility approached the National Energy Regulator of South Africa in October last year for the approval of its retail tariff and structural adjustment application. Well, to weigh in on the increase, we are joined by Hugo Kruger, who is an energy analyst, a civil and nuclear engineer. Hugo, good morning to you. I almost wanted to tell our viewers that this is not the April Fool's joke. People wanting me to say that, but unfortunately this is actually happening. And you're laughing, but we're frustrated. Your thoughts. What do you make of this increase that kicks in today?
Well, good morning, lady. Well, I've got bad news for your audience. I'm going to say it in a good way, but it's still bad news. This is not the first. This is not going to be the last time that they're going to increase tariffs. Eskom's tariff has not been cost reflective since, something like 2008. It's been 1 or 2 years maybe. So basically NERSA has been forcing it to sell at a loss for a very long time. And what has never been properly communicated to the South African public is that our electricity tariff has been far too low for far too long. In fact, it was low in the beginning of the 1980s. I looked at historical data today. And when you do that, inevitably somebody has to pay for it. Now, you can keep on kicking the bucket down the road. But what I want to say is it's not been the consumers that has actually been the culprits here. It's been the heavy industry users, and particularly the mines. If you look at South Africa's industrial tariffs, we are lower than China in some cases. So our big business mines and stuff, they've gotten a free rein for a very long time. And now the rest of us are basically taking on the tab for this. That's sort of what isn't being communicated here. But be that as it may, however you square the circle, Eskom's tariff is not cost reflective. This is not just because of their underperformance that needs to be communicated. They need a certain amount of money to maintain the transmission and the distribution infrastructure. And somebody has to pay for that. Okay. Now, my issue with this tariff is the way it has been structured. And this methodology has been used for a very long time, and I hope it's the last time they use it. Because what is now happening is you increase the tariff. Those who are richer buy solar panels and batteries if they can afford it, and then they escape the consequences of this tariff. And that means the rest of us pay for it. And what I would like Eskom to do, or for NERSA to do, is to come in with what we call capacity charges, meaning everybody should pay a fixed term, a fixed price, 500 Rand a month or whatever it's calculated as, and then the variable rate of electricity will be lower. So you should theoretically still pay the same at the end of the month, but the way it's structured. Why? Because if you go and you put a solar panel on your roof, you still need to pay, in my view, 1/3 of your electricity bill, 2/3 of your electricity bill that has to go for the transmission and distribution system. And the solar industry in particular don't want to hear this because it means that their products are not as profitable as they think. There's unfortunately no free lunch in economics. And here we're seeing an example of that coming back to hurt us.
Goodness, there's so much that I want to ask just coming out of what you've said because, and also here's the thing, the numbers really are quite astronomical. So this is what I want to get into, if you will just explain this, because a lot of us don't actually get the numbers, right? Eskom essentially had wanted to generate for the 2023-2024 financial year, 351 billion rand. And you say that Eskom has been undercharging and operating at a loss for the longest time. That NERSA actually approved them for a 318 billion rand revenue expectation for that financial year. Then there's the concern that we're going to be seeing more of these increases going all the way up to 2025. So break down the numbers for us. What does the revenue expectation then need to be for Eskom to make the money that they need to be making to operate hopefully functionally? And then how long are we going to be in the situation when we're the ones that are paying for that shortfall?
That's a very good question because I can't really answer that for one particular reason. I don't know how much of Eskom's revenue that they need is due to inefficiencies in the system. Okay, and how much they actually need. And that number needs to come clear. Because you see, if you have a badly managed utility, which we all know it is, there's obviously wastage, right? And this is what the consumers are saying, is they're saying, wait a minute, we're going to pay for something that is not produced, that is giving us less and less electricity all the time. Where the rest of us would say, of that money that they need, probably my estimate would be 2/3 of that has to go for a transmission and distribution system. And maybe that is what Eskom needs to communicate. They need to tell us how much is generation, how much is transmission, how much is distribution. Okay, and we can say, okay, generation is failing. They should not be getting money because we're now a market, right? We've unbundled Eskom. Then we have competition. And then we can say how we can reallocate it. So there's this big debate around the tariff. As for you saying 2025, I think it's going to increase till the end of this decade. Okay, because the problem is this. Let's put this tariff up, as I explained earlier. People escape. And who can escape first is the richest, the heavy consumers.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're digging a bigger black hole for Eskom. That's the situation that they're in. So what they need to do with the tariff is first come with a capacity charge or come with a time of usage charge. Because there are periods when you don't have solar and wind, for example, at night that you can charge it. And Eskom needs to first, I would say before they increase tariffs, they need to try and restructure it first and say, can we recover that way some of our volumes? If not, we have to come to a point where we have to say, is Eskom still a national monopoly? And if we close at a point where I think we're starting to question that.
Yeah. Sure. I'm almost exasperated because the number that we're looking at here is 31.4% of an increase, according to what NERSA has granted Eskom, by the end of 2025. That's the increase that we're going to be seeing by the end of 2025. That's close to a third more that we'll be paying due to electricity. Just explain a few things to us, because then we need to talk about, the machinery and what's going wrong here. Treasury essentially saying that if Eskom fails to dispose of the Eskom Finance Company by the 31st of March, government will reduce allocations of 78 billion rand to 66 billion rand. What does that mean? What are those numbers? What exactly is going on there?
Well, the government has been bankrolling Eskom. Right, it's bankrupt. And that's the other thing. I mean, the tariff increases on one side, gets debt on the other side. Okay, this is not the way to run a proper company to begin with. Now, you say they're going from, 70 billion to 60 billion you just mentioned there, or something like that?
Yes.
70 million to 60. Okay, it's 10 million difference. They still have 60 million. Okay, that's still taxpayer money that's going to go there. So what the government is now tightening the taps a little bit, but they're still giving the majority of what they used to give to Eskom. This is the problem. Like the whole... This is so difficult to even comment on this stuff, is because the whole way Eskom is funded does not make sense. In an ordinary business, you have customers, right? And your customers pay, and that is how you recover your volumes and other things. But here we have a utility where, first of all, we have municipalities that didn't pay for a long time. We have cross-subsidies, okay? What is the level of additional subsidies that's gone to Eskom? Not just the cross-subsidies. And then we have the treasury bailout coming. Okay, which in theory should have gone for Medupi and for the non-paying municipalities. But now the government keeps on throwing it. So Eskom is going the way of South African Airways, where it cannot recover its volumes on the one end because people are escaping it. And on the other hand, the government cannot throw enough money anymore because it'll bankrupt the fiscus. So what does that tell you? Somebody has to sell something. They're not going to say that before an election. You talk about the municipal debt, and I want to actually just look at that, because there was municipalities that applied for Eskom debt relief of about 26 billion rand. This is while Eskom generated a loss of 24 billion rand between 2022 and 2023. I say these numbers because even if we see this tariff hike that kicks in today and then another one possibly by the end of 2025, are we actually filling the bucket of Eskom debt? Now let's talk about that, because for years we've been talking about 400 billion rand that Eskom owes. Are we filling that bucket at all? No, we are not. And this is again, it's there's NERSA, actually, not Eskom. NERSA is again, the tariff structure is wrong. In any economic theory, let's step back a little bit and we say, how do you end load shedding tomorrow? You can end load shedding tomorrow by quadrupling the tariff, because then people just won't use electricity, right? That's how you should end it. So because the tariff is artificially low, it has to go up for investors to see fat in the system before they'll pour money in to fix the problem. But now you've got the issue with designated middlemen, like the municipalities, for example, that are also bankrupt. Now, the municipalities will argue, and I remember the mayor of Pretoria making this argument some months ago, that we are now being forced through NERSA to service the distribution system to Eskom at a loss. Okay. And in addition to that, people are escaping Eskom with rooftop solar, sinking the municipalities even further into debt, because again, the top tier, the top consumers are going first, right? So if 7% of your customers go, there might be the 7% that uses 30 or 40%, whatever percent of all the electricity sales. And that's why Tshwane is going bankrupt. That's why the East London is going bankrupt, for example. So many of these municipalities are going bankrupt because they don't want to come with something which is honesty, which is we still need a fixed tariff to service the distribution and transmission system. And Cape Town has recently proposed this, the city of Cape Town, where they said everyone's going to pay 600 Rand a month or something. And there's now a consumer backlash, primarily from the guys who went off grid. So we're facing a problem. The way I explain to people this way is Eskom is now transitioning to becoming your battery, if you will. Okay. So you have a rooftop solar, most people, or not most people, those who can afford it, and you have a battery. If both of them don't work, let's assume there's a 3-week hailstorm, okay, none of them work, there's the sun, whatever, you still draw power from Eskom. But the tariff that you have to pay to Eskom at that point in time cannot be the tariff that everyone else pays. It has to be much higher. It has to be the price of diesel at least. Okay, so this mix in tariff, the way the tariff is structured, it has to be far more dynamic, is one of the reasons why we're creating the black hole. Because the way it's currently is everyone pays a fixed tariff, right? And the problem with that is that the heavier users will say, but wait a minute, I can escape all of that by going to alternative sources. And what they're doing in the process is they're passing the insurance cost and they cost the full service cost to the end user onto the poorest households.
Sure.
That's the way it's currently being structured. So NERSA approved this methodology, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago. I hope this is the last time it's being approved. In the ideal world, I would say this. There should not be NERSA setting any tariff at all, even if Eskom charges more. Why? Because we now have a market. We've unbundled. In a market, you don't have a fixed tariff. You have competitors. And if the Eskom's tariff is theoretically too high for most of us, then in a market system, I should be able to go to the alternative.
Yeah. Sure.
That's where we should go.
Yeah, we could talk for hours. And unfortunately, this is a really frustrating situation for many South Africans as we start to go back and look at our budgets and then, factor in that we'll be paying 12% more for electricity. But let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Hugo Kruger is an energy analyst and a civil and nuclear engineer speaking to us there.